Today's show examines Down syndrome pregnancies. In our American society, prenatal testing of a baby in the womb is becoming commonplace. Moreover, the types of prenatal testing for which the predisposition toward mental and physical disabilities are proliferating. One such common test is for Down syndrome. The result of pregnancies testing positive for Down syndrome has often frightened pregnant couples. Most couples grapple with whether to abort the baby. Many do. Some studies suggest upwards to 80 to 90% of prenatal tested pregnancies for Down syndrome end with an abortion. Why is this so? Are physicians delivering the news of possible Down syndrome baby, whether prenatal or even postnatal, conveying that a Down syndrome child is bad news? Do physicians paint a limited future for the Down syndrome child? From a societal viewpoint, are Down syndrome babies perceived as a burden and a curse, or as a blessing? Today's guest has researched these issues and has some rather interesting thoughts and findings. I confidently believe you'll find today's show to be unique, informative, content-rich, truthful, and thought-provoking. Today's guest was born and raised in Cleveland, Ohio. He graduated summa cum laude from Duke University in 2001 with a bachelor's degree in science. In 2006, he graduated from both the Harvard Medical School and the Harvard's John F. Kennedy School for Government. He is a resident physician in pediatrics at Children's Hospital here in Boston and also at the Boston Medical Center. He has dedicated his professional energies toward children with cognitive and development disabilities. In 2001, he co-authored the national award-winning book entitled Common Threads Celebrating Life with Down Syndrome. He recently authored a major research study on how physicians deliver a diagnosis of Down syndrome to parents. He serves on the board of directors of the Massachusetts Down Syndrome Congress, the Massachusetts Development Disability Council, and the National Down Syndrome Society. Our guest sister has Down syndrome. Well, welcome, Dr. Brian Skotko.
Thank you, Brendan, for having me. It's good to be here.
I'm glad I pronounced your name correctly.
Perfect.
Before we get started, I'd just like to mention the call-in phone number. Should our viewers have any questions about Down syndrome pregnancies for our guest, the number is 617-973-4848. Well, Brian, what is Down syndrome and how prevalent is this chromosomal condition in our society?
Well, Brendan, we know that about 1 in every 733 of us have Down syndrome, making it the most common chromosomal condition, genetic condition, that men and women have. You and I have 2 copies of 23 chromosomes, meaning you and I have 46 chromosomes. People with Down syndrome have 1 additional copy of the 21st chromosome, meaning that they have a total of 47. What does this mean? It means in school they might need a little extra time learning. It means that they might take a little bit longer in terms of their developmental milestones, whereas lots of parents remind us that extra chromosome also brings a lot of extra love.
Uh-huh. And when did this prenatal screening test for Down syndrome become very widespread in America?
Well, the governing bodies that oversee the obstetricians and gynecologists, the American College of Obstetrics and Gynecology, back in the early 1980s, really recommended that all women over the age of 35 get or be offered some prenatal screening for Down syndrome. But as you know, this year they have changed that recommendation, and now all women, regardless of age, should be offered prenatal screening according to this governing body.
I see. Wow. And what are these screening options, and are they that accurate?
So you have 2 options. You have prenatal screening, and then you have a prenatal diagnostic test. The prenatal screening tests are largely either ultrasound-based or blood test-based, but they won't give you a definitive answer. They will give mothers a chance probability. So by getting these tests done, mothers will know, I have a 1 in 200 chance. I have a 1 in 50 chance. I have a 1 in 2,000 chance that my child will have Down syndrome. Then based on that information, the mothers will decide, do I want a definitive test done? And there are 2 definitive tests for Down syndrome, chorionic villus sampling and amniocentesis. The first one being done in the first trimester, and the second one primarily being done in the second trimester. And that, barring any unusual laboratory error, will give you a definitive test. Does your fetus have Down syndrome or not?
I see. Prenatal screening concomitant with abortion on demand in America has many expectant couples terminating their pregnancies. How come? What are the reasons? Why are they terminating their pregnancies?
Well, we know that everyone in America has different sets of values, morals, and principles. And I think what parents are faced with is when they get new information is how does that information reconcile with my personal beliefs? And what I've noticed is a lot of families haven't really answered that questions for themselves until they're finally confronted with the numbers. So by getting a prenatal screen or a prenatal test, families will have to answer the question, mothers and fathers, for me, when does life begin and what forms of life are valuable? And I think that now that prenatal testing is being offered to more mothers, more people will be challenged to answer those questions personally.
Very interesting. And in our current day society, are Down syndrome children considered a burden or a curse or a blessing to parents and to our society as a whole? How are they viewed?
It's a great question. I think that the best people to ask are those who have a child with Down syndrome, and we have done so, and I've had the privilege of working with a lot of parents who do have children with Down syndrome. And they have largely said, this child is a blessing, this child has changed my life, this child has taught me how to smile when others are frowning, this child has taught me how to laugh when others are sticking out their tongue. Somehow, having an individual with a difference in your family makes a difference. We know that research also supports this, that families who have a child with Down syndrome are less likely for the parents to actually have a divorce. So somehow by having children with Down syndrome, not only is it protective for marriages, but it also brings a lot of joy, at least to those parents that I've talked to.
I see. So the initial thought of, well, this would create a lot of adversity and tension is really not the case necessarily, at least in the long term, as far as relationships are concerned.
That's right. Parents will say that certainly there are challenges in terms of raising. You might need to seek extra medical care. You might need to see extra doctors. But what they consistently say is the pros outweigh the cons.
I see. Now, you co-authored a paper, and it's kind of, these couple of questions are perhaps similar, but it said you co-authored a paper that says continuing a pregnancy after receiving prenatal diagnosis of Down syndrome in Spain. You were over in Spain. What insights and findings did you find over there?
Well, I did a study both here in the United States and in Spain where I sent out a survey to mothers and I asked, I know you have a child with Down syndrome. Did you get the diagnosis prenatally or postnatally? And what was it like to get that diagnosis? Why did you choose to continue? And what was the process like by getting that information from your physician? And I had the privilege of going to Spain, in fact, and doing the study there. And what I found from the mothers in Spain, similar to the mothers here in the United States, is that doctors are oftentimes inaccurate, insufficient, and sometimes offensive when it comes to describing life with Down syndrome. The differences between Spain and the United States are the fact that in Spain, mothers who get a prenatal diagnosis are even less likely to continue the pregnancy than they are here in the United States.
Wow, that's something. And now, whether prenatal or postnatal, do physicians have shortcomings on, well, I guess I was going to say you mailed out this 11-page survey to mothers with Down syndrome in the United States and Spain. What were you trying to find out? And tell us about the results. What were you angling for at first? Did this have to do with how your sister was treated and that sort of thing growing up?
What I wanted to do was to ask mothers, what was it like to get the diagnosis? How are we in the medical profession doing? And how could we do a better job? There was really no major comprehensive study out there that really told us doctors how we were doing, and who knows best other than our patients. So it was an opportunity for me to explore what the state of the art is in terms of giving the diagnosis and how we could improve. And the results were telling. Mothers who received a prenatal diagnosis said that doctors did an accurate job in terms of explaining the logistics, explaining this is how the ultrasound machine is going to work, here is how an amniocentesis is done. But when it comes to explaining what is Down syndrome, mothers said that they oftentimes got the medical realities, but they were never given the full-scale possibilities that they've grown to realize now that they have a child with Down syndrome.
And whether prenatal